What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life. On this podcast, we are going to talk about our challenges and our triumphs, and so that anyone around the world can truly know that you are not alone. So let's get started. This is episode number 150, and my special guest is Larry Stein. Larry Stein struggled with stuttering for 50 years, compromising his career and suffering debilitating depressions. In an effort to save the business of his dreams, he launched a drive to improve his speech that far exceeded his expectations. Over the next 2 years, he relearned to speak, retrained his brain, and worked through speaking situations that once had paralyzed him. Today, he runs his dream business, is a professional speaker, and mentors people who stutter on nearly every continent of the world at no charge. I am honored to have him as a guest with me on the My Stuttering Life podcast. Welcome, Larry Stein.
How are you, Pedro? Good to see you.
I am a great sir. I thank you very much. This is a huge honor. We have a lot of topics to go over, so let's get started. All right, sir?
Terrific.
So, do you remember, when you first had began to stutter?
Not really. My mom told me that I didn't start speaking at all until the age of 4. So that tells you something was maybe a little wrong. That's pretty unusual. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I stuttered in kindergarten. So I was, just about to turn 5. So I was 4 years old when I began to stutter.
And so does it run in your family? Are there any other family members who also have a stutter?
Interesting question. My dad said that he stuttered when he was young and he outgrew it. So I always thought I would outgrow it. I did not. My older brother was the most charming guy you'll ever meet. He obviously didn't stutter. My sister was, she is very outgoing and everything, did not stutter. I have 2 first cousins, though, at least one first cousin who did stutter a lot. And he had a very successful career. It may have been more successful if he didn't stutter, but so that's all that I know in terms of history.
See, my mom, she had a stutter. However, in her teens, she had told herself, I'm done with this. I mean, I'm done. It had caused her agitation and frustration and irritation. And she told herself, I don't know how she did it. I don't know. But it was gone. It was gone.
Well, I told myself that 100 times and nothing ever happened.
Sir, let me tell you, I've done it a million times. Nope, I still got mine, but it's all good.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Okay, now, have you ever had speech therapy? And if you had, was it helpful?
Yes, I went to speech therapy when I was, I think, in elementary school, maybe fourth grade. I don't know, third or fourth grade. I went to Northwestern University. At that time, they had maybe the most highly regarded program in the country. And then in high school, I went to University of Chicago. Um, and I had gone to some other speech therapists kind of in between a little bit. But, and then after that, but was it helpful? I'd love to say yes, but I have to say no, actually. Um, nothing, nothing really stuck. Although, in my mid 50s, when I finally began to make some progress on my speech, it was because I was doing a little public speaking for a nonprofit, and I just was so nervous I fell into phrasing, which I learned a little bit at Northwestern, but more so at Chicago in my teens. I had never done it outside, but I fell into that. And I'm probably jumping ahead here, but I'm going to do that. And after about, so I was asked to be the president of a very small nonprofit. My first cousin was a director in the operations. They asked me to be on the board, so I was on the board for 4 years. I was going to get off the board, and they asked me to be the president. I think the only other people they had were like in their mid 80s. So they asked me. And what do you think I said, Pedro?
I think you said yes.
You think I said yes, really?
I
Why do you
think you
think that?
In my history, what I had learned is that I had to push myself out of my comfort zone, and so I was asked to hop on stage and give a speech, and in my head, well, I have a voice in my head. I call him Oscar the Grouch, and so he told me, "You cannot do that. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? You know you cannot do that." However, I had to tell him, "Look, I have been offered an opportunity,
Yeah.
and it is going to push me completely. I mean, come on. I am an introvert. However, I was offered an amazing opportunity, and so I took it. And when I walked on stage, let me tell you, Mr. Stein, let me tell you, sir. I mean, everything was all knotted up. I mean, everything, my heart, my lungs, and my stomach and everything. However, when I got on stage, it was a whole other world. It was a whole other world.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So,
Great. All right. So you think I said yes. Well, you see, you overestimate me. I avoided everything in my life, everything. And of course, I said no.
no. Yeah.
And then they asked me again because the only other person they had was in their mid 80s. And I said no because I'd have to lead board meetings,
Yeah.
15, 20 people or so, 25. And I never, by that time, my speech had really improved. I was speaking much better. I was more comfortable. I'd been in the work world, but I managed meetings like with 3 or 4 people, but not 25. And I'd have to give 3 or 4, 5, 10-minute speeches in a year. And I was not going to do that because the last speech I gave was a 10-minute speech that took 28 minutes. 10 turned into 28. And that was just to some, colleagues at an accounting firm. So I was not going to do that. Well, they kept on asking me. I finally gave in. Maybe it was the third or fourth time. And I fell into this phrasing thing that I learned in speech therapy. I was just so nervous, but I also did a whole lot of other things. And I'll let you ask me more questions. Go ahead.
All right, sir. It's all good. It's all good. Okay, now I want to talk about school. So, how was the school experience with having a stutter? Because, school, is hard for everybody. However, if you have a stutter, it's a little bit more, let me see, what's the word? A challenging. How did you handle school with having a stutter?
Well, I avoided everything again. But so I was fortunate in that I was a really big kid and I was usually one of the best athletes. And so everyone wanted me on their team all the time. And so I had friends through that. And I grew up with all these kids on my little block. It was a dead end street and we just played all day. I didn't have to use a phone. I just knocked on people's doors and we just went out and played. I didn't have to talk. We just played. And I still get together with those guys now, 63 years later. Um, but so, but it was difficult with my speech. It really was. It was very difficult. What was harder was when I was preparing to go to college. And when I was about 11, I fell in love with the stock market. It was my dad's hobby. He would sit in the corner of the living room with the newspaper open. We had newspapers then. And he'd be, looking behind this newspaper. And one day I finally, said, what are you doing? And he, motioned me to come over and I walked behind and I saw this mass of long columns of letters and numbers. And that was the stock market pages. And I fell in love with it. I began asking him questions. He told me to read books. I read all the books in the local library. And when I was 17, getting ready to go to college, he said, why don't you, and I began investing when I was 13. So I was in love with this. And of course, the first thing I invested in went up 128% in 6 months. So
wow, that's
I
great.
thought I was a genius, but it was just that I read it in one of his magazines. It was just luck. But, I thought I was a genius. And so I went downtown to meet our broker. And here's how that went. He said, oh, so you want to be in Chicago? Do you want to do sales? And I said, no. I mean, I could barely ask the question. I couldn't imagine doing sales. I said, no. He said, well, there's an analyst community in New York. You want to meet an analyst? I said, yes. He said, do you want to go to New York? I said, no. I mean, how could I even get around? I can't. I had pretty severe stutter, pretty severe. And so in 3 minutes, I gave up my dream. Gone. 3 minutes, gone. And so I ended up becoming an accountant, a CPA, master's in tax, because I thought I wouldn't have to talk much. And I went to college in accounting. I hated college. I hated my work afterward, and I hated my life. It was just a disaster. I went through depressions. I mean, I'm amazed that I'm alive still, frankly, it was a very difficult time. And finally, in my early 30s, I got a job in another field, investor relations, which kind of used my knowledge of investing. And I could write. If you can't talk, you better be able to write. So I was a really good writer. And so I wrote for this company that I would have never taken a job for, but I needed to work. I had a wife. We already had one of our kids, and that job saved me because I was with people. I was talking. My speech was improving because I was talking a lot. Not a lot, but more than I had before. And then I became a consultant. And of course, when I was offered this job, I was offered this job at this consulting firm to do investor relations. The guy, the head guy who was in the news a lot, he very well known. I couldn't believe he, called me at 9:40 at night to offer me the job. He was, it would be like a 50% raise and a lot of upside. And I said, I don't think I can do this. He said, oh, you're going to be interfacing with CEOs of publicly traded companies, CFOs, and I've seen your writing. It's fantastic. You'll be great. And he said, you want to do this? 50% raise, big upside. And of course, I said, no, because again, I can't talk to these people. I can't do this. And he said, I know you have a speech problem, but you may have some difficulties in the start, but then once they get to know you and get to know your work, it'll be okay. You'll see. And he was exactly right. He said, sleep on it. I did. And I decided, no one else is going to offer me a job, certainly not with a 50% raise. And so I took the job, and my income not only went up 50%, then it more than tripled within 5 years. I mean, it was an incredible opportunity. It went really well, and I was speaking much better. And then I'm going to fast forward things here for you a little bit, okay? And then by age 47, a friend of mine who I worked with at the consulting company, he was a consultant also at a different company. He said, my cousin, who has a little insurance firm, they might start an investment arm. Why don't you talk to my cousin? I talked to the cousin. By that time, I was really good at small talk. Pressure situations I couldn't do, but we had this, nice little conversation, and he hires me. Take a cut, more than half of a cut, pay cut. But I was so desperate to get into the investment field. And so I took the job, and I worked there for 5 years, and then worked with a friend who had a investment firm. And at age 54, I decided, well, I didn't quite decide because it was not working out. So I was desperate again. No one would hire me. No one would hire me. I still couldn't say my name. I still couldn't talk on the phone. I had only a few clients. No one would hire me. And so I opened up my own firm. And it was just out of desperation again. And after a year, I was so excited. I had my own firm, had some clients, not nearly enough. I had a son who was at an Ivy League school, another son who was going to go to an even more expensive college. And I realized that I hardly had any clients, and I had to do something. And the reason I hardly had any clients was, while I could do small talk, to ask for $1 million is a pretty tough ask. And I still couldn't say my name, still couldn't make phone calls. It was, it was getting a little testy, getting a little difficult. And then something incredible happened. And I already alluded to it. I was leaving a board meeting at this little nonprofit, just a volunteer nonprofit. And I'm ready to walk out the door. It's a dark, snowy night, and I'm zipping up my coat, and it hits me. I speak better when I public speak. Why don't I just public speak all the time? I'm going to speak phrase to phrase to phrase. Words and sounds don't matter. I'm just going to speak phrase to phrase to phrase. And I started to that was a 20-second period in my head. And I decided to throw away how I talk, and I'm just going to do this. Again, desperation. My life was just one desperate fling to another, hoping something good would happen. And my speech improved a little bit. And then I kind of got into this, and I began watching broadcasters on TV. And I fell in love with how Matt Lauer speaks. It's very compelling. And I could do Matt Lauer all day. He would emphasize words. He'd use hand gestures. Just very, totally in command. He was great. So, and then I had this eye problem. You go through very severe stuttering, and it's not surprising that you have other anxiety problems. Well, my eyes were blinking incessantly. It's called a blepharospasm. And this friend said, "Oh, why don't you see my yoga instructor? Maybe he can help you relax your eyes." Because I had one Botox treatment. That was the treatment. I tried not to have it, but I finally just gave in. And so I didn't want to have it again because it only lasted, it's supposed to last only 3 months. It lasted longer, but it was just a brutal experience. My other experiences were much better. Anyways, so I go to this guy. He's got red hair like Bozo the Clown. These super wide shoulders, little tiny waist, arms incredibly skinny. I never seen anyone like this. And we're talking for a couple minutes, and then he kind of leans his head into my chest. He has his ear against my chest. I don't know it. Maybe it was 30 seconds. It seemed to me like 30 minutes. It was so weird. And he finally pulls away. Maybe it was a couple minutes. I don't know. And he says, "You don't breathe right." I go, "Well, I'm concerned about my eyes. They're going like this." And he goes, "You don't breathe right." I said, "What?" So he said, you're taking these little half breaths. You need to take a full breath. You need to clear out your lungs. You need to take a full breath. And I handed him the check for $100, and I walked out. I go, "Well, it's another check that I've wasted," because again, desperation, always desperate. And as I'm walking to my car, it was a very long walk to my car, it hits me, maybe I don't breathe right. And maybe that's affecting my speech. So I love singing, and I would always sing in the shower, and I never stuttered then. So why don't I just breathe like I do when I sing? And that's what I decided to do, and that's what I did. And my speech improved a little more. And so that's how I got to what I call my speaking strategy, breathe, emphasize, phrase. And it's just mimicking broadcasters. It's just how good speakers speak. But then I realized that, if the pressure is on, I can't do it. I revert back to my old self. And so I decided I had to make it automatic. I had to practice it so much that it would be automatic. I don't even have to think about it. And that's what I did. And my speech improved even more. But then the really interesting part comes up. So I'll let you ask me another question, but we're about to get to the interesting things because frankly,
Hmm.
the mechanics of speaking, even
Yes.
though that seems to be what everyone wants to talk to me about,
Yes, sir.
if I was trying to go from here to there, it maybe got me maybe half of the way there, maybe less. The other stuff, it was a foundation that I needed because my speech was horrible.
Yes,
But
sir.
go ahead. All right, go ahead.
All right, sir.
I'll take a break.
Okay. It's all good, sir. Okay. So, I want to go back all briefly because I have a lot of teachers and parents and speech, a therapist who hear my podcast. And so they always want to hear this huge answer. And so, okay, sir. And so I want to ask you, do you have any advice for parents and teachers and speech therapists with regards to children who stutter?
Hmm. Honestly, not really. I actually do mentor people all over the world, but they're adults. I think the youngest person is probably maybe 18, maybe 21. Um, but when kids are young, I think they you have a chance that until the age of 10 or something like that, 80% of them they're starting resolves, whether they outgrow it or whatever. It just goes away. So I honestly don't have any great ad- advice for that, other than I think you want to make speaking fun. I think my mom wanted me to go into uh, to be in a play, and she thought that would help me. And you know what? She was right. But of course, I said no
No,
because
of course.
I couldn't. I just couldn't picture doing that. But that would have been really helpful, I think. Um, Making speaking fun is really an important thing of what I did. And so I'm I'm going to just continue my story a little bit because it'll get back to that. And so I improved my speech a lot. I had my speaking strategy. It was automatic. I was really doing well, but not nearly well enough. And I was frustrated because I couldn't get to where I wanted to get to, which was basically to build my business. I mean, this wasn't about my speech as much as about money. Really, I just I had to build my business. I had to be able to call people. I had to be able to feel comfortable doing that. I had to be able to uh, say my name, those kind of things. And so it hit me one day like a shovel over the head that 50 years of stuttering really messed me up. And I didn't know what to do. I had taken Psych 100, the first psychology class in college. I didn't know how to do it. I had no idea. And I began doing something crazy. I began doing the opposite of every first thought that I had. I, I, I began to call them inclinations. So rather than avoid, I would go to. Rather than avoid a speaking situation, I would, go there and speak. Rather than say no, I would say yes. Rather than, I mean, I was always trying to shorten my sentences into the shortest number of words. I would lengthen it. and I would go even beyond what I should have. I would just everything the opposite. And that had a real big impact on me. Rather than being all nervous and rigid about speaking, I decided I was going to have fun. I was going to do two things in every conversation. I was going to enjoy it. I was going to give. So with me, I was so focused on trying to get words out, I was totally inwardly focused. I decided, no, I'm going to focus on the other person. In this case, it's you. And I'm going to give to you. And so I'm taking the focus off of me, putting it onto you. All these things, and I can go on and on. Just doing the opposite of everything. I would literally walk around and I would realize that I'm doing something that that was kind of an unhelpful inclination. And I would literally do this. I would literally flip my hands around. I would literally walk around doing this. Even in a conversation, I would just go like this. I go, all right, so what's the opposite? I mean, I would pause in a conversation. So one of the things, so for example, and this probably all began when I was doing that first speech for the nonprofit, and I was so nervous that I fell into speaking in phrases rather than just talking normally. I also noticed I had this friend who had a dazzling smile. She was way to the right, and I would look at her, and my wife was on the left side. My cousin was on the middle. So rather than talking to 150 people, I would talk to 3. Again, everything the opposite. Rather than being so nervous and hurrying through everything, I decided I was going to pause.
The pause, yeah.
So long that I wanted to see who would become fidgety in the crowd. I mean, I was just making up games while I was up there to relax myself. Again, doing the opposite. That was the beginning of my whole doing the opposite. I didn't realize it was all doing the opposite, but it later hit me. And so doing the opposite was a really important thing for me. And then I just began, rather than doing these bold things, like talking on a podcast, or like I always see on the internet, oh, go to a street corner, post a sign that says, I stutter, and tell everyone you stutter. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even say the word stutter. I couldn't even say my name. Well, how am I going to do that? So I just began taking super small steps, really small, almost insignificant in speaking situations. I talked to my wife first, then my kids, then friends, easy speaking situations, then talking in more full sentences. I remember the first time I told a story. I was like 56 years old. The first time I told a story. And I just kind of got into this flow, and I realized that I could just pause in between phrases and kind of hold them in the palm of my hand. Before that, if I tried to talk to more than 3 people, it was like 1,000 spotlights on me. And so that's how I, and then at the top of my hierarchy was to say my name. And that I did. That took several months, many months of just really small steps. I began introducing myself to little kids. I would call hardware stores. I would say, I would introduce myself and say, do you have a hammer? Well, of course, a hardware store has a hammer. They don't care what my name is. And so it was a totally low pressure situation. It was an easy situation. I would call hotels with 2,000 rooms, and I would say, hi, I'm Larry Stein. Do you have a room? Well, of course they have a room. They have no interest in my name. And so it made it easy. So I did a ton of these things over and over again, every day, a million of these things. And I finally got got the guts to, because I was just stacking one small success after another. If you do that in rapid succession, you're going to start gaining confidence, what I call true confidence, the type that lasts. People, talk about on the internet that, I have affirmations, I'm thinking positive, I love me. That may foster a little confidence, but it's not going to last when you're in a tough situation. But if you can have a ton of successes in easy situations and build up to those higher situations, you can really build confidence. I got to the point, Pedro, where I was like looking for challenges. Like I was knocking down doors. I felt invincible. I felt like I had a machete in my hand. I'm just going through the jungle and just chopping down one challenge after another. It was exhilarating. It was the most exciting thing I had ever done. And 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 I finally got through being able to say my name and being confident with it. So in answer to your question, I don't know what to tell parents. I would just say it's important to have your kid, your child get out there and talk and enjoy talking. And if you can find a good therapist, that's great. Um, but it's a challenge, once they get into their teens, if they still stutter, that's a challenging time. And so um, that's why I see people, when they're either entering the workforce or they're trying to improve their standing in whatever job they have. And it's very exciting. I don't charge for it. Never will. Never have. Never will. But that's how I uh, get my kicks these days. I continue to have my business. In fact, I'm in the process of selling it. So it went very well, and I devote my late afternoons and evenings to the stuttering community.
How awesome, sir. That is just awesome. And then also, I want to just hop in, quickly. I want to tell everybody that you wrote a book, an awesome book. I mean, it is truly an awesome book. It is a manual of how to. And so, um, there is a bit in here in which I do. I do this. And when I read that, I said, woo woo, I am on the right track. And so, um, if I have scheduled a presentation, okay, I may have, 20 people or 30 or 50, I do what you do. I go into the audience and I greet everybody. Hi, good morning.
Uh-huh.
How are you? I'm Pedro. And and so I meet everybody in there and they've got smiles and they're happy and I mean it's all good. And when I get on st- on the st- the st- the st- st- when I get on stage, I can see them and they are smiling and they are happy and it helps everything out. I go into
Yep.
my speech. I mean, and so when I read that, I said, "Woo woo!" I do that too, and it works. It works. Yeah, it
Certainly
really
helps.
does.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to talk about a what what I call an ADL, and that is an activity uh, of a daily a living. Okay, it is a challenge for all of us. It's talking on the telephone. I know you had talked about it, briefly, but could you elaborate how you handled the telephone?
Yes, sure. So just like everything, I went from easy situations to harder situations. Um, the phone was brutal for me. Um, Not only in my own parents' house, for work. I mean, I have, I have stories in the book that it was just brutal, and it was particularly brutal in those days because you didn't have voicemail, so you had to answer every call. You didn't, yep, you didn't know who was on the phone, so when I was growing up, it was my parents' friends or whatever. I had no idea, and I had a really hard time with it. But in the work world, it got to the point where I had to answer the phone by saying my name, and that was unbelievably hard. And 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 that was before I had really made my big improvement, which was, by the way, a 2-year process from age 55 to 57. I am now 67, and so one of the big things that I did though was I set the stage for what I would do many years later to be able to say my name. And that was be able to answer the phone by saying my name. So I kind of broke it down like a professional basketball player would shoot a free throw. You know, when you're a professional basketball player, you have a certain habitual thing that you do before you shoot a free throw. Maybe you bounce the ball 3 times, maybe you flip it, whatever it is, and then you just shoot it the exact same way each time. Swish, swish. And so I tried to turn it into a process so that every time would be the same, and I would just go swish. And that's what I worked on. So, and I did basically the opposite of every single little phase of the process. So the phone rings. Rather than getting all jarred, which I used to do, panic, I would smile. Rather than wait for the phone to ring, 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 I would let it ring one time, take a breath, and pick it up. Smile and say, Larry Stein. And that was the start of doing the opposite. That was the start of working through problems. And that was the start of me being able to say my name. So, and I, really got good at that when I had my own business because I had to do that. I had to be able to answer the phone. That's, that was a pretty essential thing. And but making phone calls, again, rather than getting super nervous, which I would anyways, I did things not to calm myself down, but I would just do the opposite. So I just play around on the phone. And so if I were to call you, Pedro, you'd answer the phone, hello. And I go, Pedro, how you doing? It's Larry Stein. So rather than jumping and trying to say all that in one breath, like I would have, that was, I think, 3 breaths there. And I am just speaking 3 phrases, and they're short phrases, but I'm breathing in between them. I'm just having fun. And so that's basically what I do. Now, with all this stuff, I really don't think about how I'm talking. Right now, I'm just focused on you. And I'm focused on conveying the message I'm not thinking about what's going on in here at all, honestly, because I've made this so automatic. I've I've just it just it's a process now. It's just nothing I think about. Once in a while I will. Once in a while.
See,
But
and 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 that is what I had I re- had a re- I resonated with. I did, a mindful meditation. I had a coach, and so he had taught me just what you were talking about. If you were having a conversation, what uh what I do now is I am in the conversation. I am a present, and I give everything to the other individual. I have the
good,
good eye contact. I'm actively, you know, uh, listening, and it is true. It is true. I didn't even think about my stutter, and they would ask a question and it would just come out. And I'm like, wow. Look, I have, goosebumps. But it works. It works. If you give everything to the other person and just enjoy the conversation. I don't, I don't even, you know, I think about my speech.
good, good, good. Yeah.
It's, it's awesome. It's awesome. Okay. Now I want to ask you a hot topic, a question. So I ask everybody on my podcast. All of the answers are split right down the middle, and I respect everyone's answers. All right, so I want to ask you, Mr. Stein, and so do you do you let others help you finish your um your sentences?
Well, as you can tell, you haven't heard me stutter. So this is me. This is me all the time. Now, that doesn't mean I'm cured. I'm not cured. That doesn't mean like if I'm traveling and I'm overseas in a fast moving like market buying bread and everyone's talking a different language and moving real fast, budding, trying to get into line. And I could have, a momentary glitch, you know, but it's usually just for a moment. Usually no one notices it but me. So um, that really isn't something that I face because I really don't have trouble speaking anymore. I mean, I I can't believe that I have been so fortunate, but and it was certainly not by accident. I worked my tail off,
It's hard
but
work, sir. Yeah, it's
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 very
it,
hard work.
it's hard work every single day. And any, a coach will, tell you, if you want to improve at anything, you have to practice every day. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, so I really had to work at it. But again, after I really made some progress, the work became fun. It became exhilarating, and now there's this movement, and I'll talk about something even more controversial than that. Of that you should embrace your stutter, be happy with your stutter, and all that. All true. That's great. All true. That's great. But if I didn't do what I did during that 2 year period, I don't think I would have ever had a business, and I think we would have had to move out of our house, and my kids would have had to leave college. Um, and more so, I would not have discovered these things within me that I could be resourceful, because I was never resourceful. I was never disciplined. I'm become very disciplined. I was never able to handle pressure. Now I can do that. I was never able to think on my feet. Well, you see me talking. I have no notes in front of me. So I I discovered a whole new me by going through this difficult process that I would have never known. So, and I avoided it my whole life, but I think uh, it was the greatest thing that I ever did. And I didn't have to become this easily, with this kind of easy speech that I really don't think about it. That was never even a thought of my goal, not even a thought. But I just needed to be comfortable speaking. And you seem comfortable speaking. Many other people are comfortable speaking. Whatever comfortable is, that's up to the person. But to go through a real process that really you test yourself, and you're like, you're learning new things about yourself that you never knew. It's very exciting. It's very exciting.
How
Frankly, I
cool.
kind of miss it.
Yes, sir. Now, what has your stutter taught you?
Well, you're not going to like what I say. So, what my stutter taught me was to avoid things. My stutter taught me, to give up easily. Um, but my stutter was really an incredible gift, because it, for me, finally in my mid 50s, when I had to do something or I was going to go broke, um, I I realized that I had to do something, and it was like a call to action. And if I didn't have that call to action, I would have probably done nothing with my life. But all these wonderful things happened because I took action on my stutter, and I improved my speech well beyond what I would have ever dreamed of. But it was a lot of hard work, but that hard work developed a whole new me in me. And so what my stutter taught me, for me, isn't the question. For what I learned from working through my stutter is, well, it's a whole book, and I'm going to probably do more writing on that, because taking on that challenge, was so life-changing, and making progress on it with each little step, I was learning something new about myself. And believe me, I am not the same person I was before I really took this thing on. Completely different person. And people who knew me before and know me now, they can't believe that how I have changed it, not only in my speech, but also as a person. Um, so so I'm thankful I had that, even though for most of my life, Pedro, I thought I was terribly cursed. I really felt I was cursed. And now I feel like, wow, it was such a blessing. It was such a gift, but only because I took it on, as you have.
Right. And that leads me into um, your awesome book. And so I want to tell everybody, if you are hearing this on audio, or if you are watching this on YouTube, I want for all of y'all to go right now, hop on Amazon and get this book. It is titled free to speak. And so the inspiration, you know, for this book, it was all of the challenges. Correct, sir?
Yeah, yeah. I felt I absolutely had to write it. First of all, I felt so unbelievably fortunate to work through my stuttering. Again, there's no cure, but to get to the other side, and what I decided was about 4 years ago. My older brother took sick. He actually ended up dying, um, and I decided with that I was going to stop taking on any new clients, and I would just focus on my current clients, and I would give my afternoons, late afternoons and evenings, to people who stutter all over the world. And we meet for an hour each week. There are people on 4 different continents, Europe, North America, of course, Africa, Asia, um, people in all walks of life. And it's the most exciting thing that I do. And many of these people are now giving speeches. Um, and many of these people have moved up in their careers. It's been incredibly exciting. And they have enjoyed, growth in their personal lives. And that's what I love doing.
See, and and you have on here, you have a manual. I mean, it tells you step by step, and that I thought was just awesome because you 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 hear people talk about, well, if you do this and if you do that. No. What I need a plan. Okay. If I have a plan, if it's it, if it is, you know, specific as to what I have to do day after day after day, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it be- because, you know, I have it here to help me out. And so, what I tell everybody, you know, never stop, learning. Okay.
Mhm.
I am a 53, and so I still want to learn. I still want to learn. I know that we don't have a cure, and there isn't a magic, you know, you know, pill. I mean, I've had 20 years of speech, therapy. I mean,
Huh?
I mean, I have done everything: hypnosis and voodoo, you know, you know, a, a device. However, I still have it. But, but it, 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 it doesn't, define who I am. It is just what I have, and it is not going to to st- stop me in in the pursuit of my goals. And that
Fantastic.
is what I love about your book. You have written a book, and it's a tool. It is a tool. And what I tell everybody, I have a toolbox. I mean, I've had my stutter for 49 years. I mean, I have done everything, sir. I have done the accents. I mean, I tap my head. I mean, I have done everything. However, you have a book that has a manual, a step by step. And so I am happy that it is out there to help people in our uh, a community, because it is I mean, it is a tool, and so I want to tell you Thank you for writing a great book, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really put my heart and soul into it, Pedro. I could have done it much faster, but I ended up doing it over about a 3-year period because I wanted to make sure that I had everything that I could remember that I did. And and I also now have videos that I've done to explain each part. There are 12 videos that I did on YouTube. I have like 80 videos I did, short ones on Instagram. Uh, and they're all Stein on stuttering. You can find them there. I have a Facebook site, Stein on stuttering. They're all Stein on stuttering. And so I, try and keep the learning going for people. They have the book. And then for 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 people who really want to, push forward, they can work with me for free. And there, I actually don't come in with an agenda. I I begin by having them talk, and I see where they are in their journey, what they want, how their speech is, what kind of things are holding them back, and then we begin. So everyone's my approach with everyone is a little bit different because not everyone's at the same place. And so it's the most fascinating thing that I've ever done in my life because it's so personal, it's so individual, and we become very good friends, and I treasure these friends like family.
How cool, sir. That is awesome. Okay, now I want to ask you a very important question. Okay, now my podcast is in 141 countries on 6 continents. It is truly
Wow.
awesome. I mean, I I am a blessed. Now, how would a a listener, reach out, to you? What would be the best way to have them get in contact with you?
Well, the easiest thing really is you can email me, Larry at steinonstuttering.com. And I'll say it again, Larry, Larry, at steinonstuttering.com. And I have a website, steinonstuttering.com. I have Instagram at Stein on Stuttering, uh, YouTube at Stein on Stuttering 3008. They added 3008. So um, Facebook, Stein on Stuttering. They're all the same. They're all the same. And I love getting emails. I love hearing from people, and I will get back to you. I'll get back to you right away, and we'll develop a friendship. And if I can help you, that's great. But there's never any charge. This is what I love doing.
How cool, sir. I mean, that is, woo, you are what I would call a bright light in our community. And so, I want to tell you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I got to warn you, you had, I better get ready because, you will have, people from all over the world who are going to email you, and reach out. And so I want to tell everybody, I want y'all to hop on Amazon and get his book. It is awesome. It is called a free to speak. Okay. And I mean, just hop on it and get the book. It has a manual, y'all, in the back. It has a manual. How cool is that to help you out? And so, I want to tell you, sir, I mean, we've had a great conversation. I want to thank you. And then, you know, down the road, I want to do it again.
Oh,
If
I'd
you
love to.
have a book, a publication, I mean, I mean, it don't matter because you are hashtag awesome. And I mean, I am, I'm honored to have met you, sir.
And it's an honor to meet you, Pedro. I hope we can do more stuff together. This was great. Let's do it again. Let's keep in touch.
All right, sir. I thank you very much. I hope you have a great evening. Take care, be well, and stay safe.
Thank you, Pedro. All the best to you.
Thank you, sir.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.